this book had me simping over a man named Ford. That's the talent Elsie Silver has. Hello everyone, it is Opal and Bear from the Pomegranate System, and today we are reviewing the Rose Hill series. Just the first two, because the third one's not out yet. I believe it comes out March next year. March next year is going to be a huge time for book readers, given that we also have Sunrise on the Reaping, which is another Hunger Games universe book, which, oh my gosh, March is going to be nuts. But today we're just talking about Wild Love and Wild Eyes. Now, these are my first Elsie Silver books. These are not her first books. She does have another book series. I believe there's 5 books. And after reading these two, I definitely am going to go snatch up those as well. I've already gotten 2 on hold from the library. So I'll start the series, see if I like the characters, and then buy the books if I want to. I started listening to Wild Love using my Spotify hours, and immediately I was hooked and I bought the 2 books. It seems to be a trend in the industry right now where a lot of book series are standalones, but they're all interconnected. I don't know how you could read this and fully appreciate it without reading this. Just like any of the books that I've been reviewing recently, any book from Anna Huang, I'm just like, yeah, you could read it on its own, but you really shouldn't. Becca Mac as well. Becca Mac's another one where everything interconnects. And obviously in Elsie's 5-book series that I haven't read yet, they're all interconnected as well. Starts with a map. It says the Elsie Silver universe, and it's got some cities highlighted that aren't in these 2, so I'm assuming it must be in the first series, so I'm definitely going to have to read it next. It is a small town romance. They're both small town romances. Rose Hill is a small country town in Canada. And we kick off with Wild Love. Now, Wild Love is dual POV between Ford and Rosie. Now, I'm going to introduce the characters together because they're just so closely interwoven. This is Ford and Rosie's story, and this is West and Skylar's story. Rosie and West are siblings. West and Ford are best friends. Ford has had eyes for Rosie since they were teenagers, and he's kind of been simping for 10 years. He's been pining for his best friend's sister, and she has moved to the big city, and she's gotten her master's degree, she's got an MBA, and she is ready to break out of the small town that she grew up in, and she's got a great job, and she's got a boyfriend, and he checks all of the boxes. He's like a comfortable fit. And then her boss decides to get a bit handsy, and she tells him to go fuck himself, which, you know, valid. And then goes home to her boyfriend, tells him what happens, and the boyfriend's just like, maybe you shouldn't say anything, because this is a pretty good job and you don't want to jeopardize that. You don't want to say anything that's going to implicate you or compromise your position, you know, maybe he didn't mean to. And she's just like, wow, I've just gotten the ick. Who wouldn't? That's, oh, such a risk. And the sad thing is, that is actually quite a common response. That is quite a common response because they just don't get it. They're just, it's so normalized and they just don't get it. She is just like, no, I'm going to HR. She goes in the next morning. HR approaches her first and is like, we've got to talk about your performance. She gets fired unjustly, obviously, because the boss clearly got to HR before her. She goes into a kind of wallowing period where she's feeling not great, as you would, and she goes, I think I need to reconnect with my family. I think I need to go home. And the boyfriend's like, okay, bye. And he's like, not wanting to break up, but he's also not willing to go with her. So he's kind of just there. And there's no discussion. There's no, are you okay? There's no checking in. There's no anything from him really. And she's kind of, the ick is still there, and she's kind of like, I want to punch him a little bit. I just want him to be on my side. And at the moment, it doesn't feel like he's on my side. And she's like, yeah, sure, okay. She goes back to Rose Hill. Meanwhile, Ford has just found out that he's biologically a dad. A 12-year-old appears on his doorstep. He's a billionaire, by the way. He's turned his fortune Little bit of a nepo baby. He's turned his fortune though into a $1 billion enterprise. He's in music. He's starting his own record label, Rose Hill Records, which he then changes at the end. He changes the name. But this 12-year-old shows up on his doorstep and is just like, I'm your kid. And he's just like, nah, I bet it's because Forbes just labeled me the world's hottest billionaire and this kid's just looking for money. And this kid, Cora, is just like, mate, did you ever into a cup? Because turns out that I was conceived using a sperm donor and the paperwork checks out. You're my dad. And he's just like, wow, no way. There was that one time where I wanted to go to an Iron Maiden concert and my dad was trying to teach me the value of money. So he didn't want to give me money. He didn't give me money for the tickets. And so I did go to the donation slot to get money to go to the concert. And Cora was just like, well, you sure showed him. And we find out that Cora's dad recently passed away and her mom is going through this major depression to the point where it's so debilitating and she needs help. Cora stepped up and is like trying to help her mom as best she can, but it's gotten to the point where the support is too much. Like she needs to go into a healthcare facility temporarily, and she's talking to social workers and she's getting it and her school counselor, and everything's like really under wraps. And the social worker is just like, okay, if you want to bypass the foster system, then we need like a relative or some sort of guardianship. And because she has no living relatives, but Ford is technically her biological father, she approaches him as like, you don't even have to do like much work, it won't be a burden. And she's trying to sell herself to him in the way that she's just like, I need you to do this for me. And he's immediately just like, yes, I will help this kid out, because this kid, even though we haven't done the paternity test yet, though like we'll get there, this kid is my kid because we can see it. She's like a miniature version of him. And that gets referenced several times throughout the book by like his siblings and his parents. When they meet Cora, they're like, wow, she is a miniature version of you. And Cora kind of gets taken in by not only him, but his sister, his parents, and also Rosie, and then Rosie's parents as well, who still live in Rose Hill. So it's kind of got like a found family element just from Cora's perspective. So there's touches of that as well, which I really appreciated, I really loved. But back to Ford and Rosie. So Rosie's going back to Rose Hill. Ford's just found out he's a dad and he's trying to open up his own record label. But in order to do that, he needs to build the studio. The studio is not built yet because every time he tries to renovate, there's just another room that has like mold and is like falling apart, so he has to get a contractor in. Rosie not having a job is just like, okay, well, if Ford is building an empire from the ground up, then maybe there's a position for me. So she propositions him and is just like, give me a job. And he's just like, are you demanding or are you asking? And she's like, I will work whatever you want. Like, you've got Cora now, you've got your hands full. I'll do school pickup, school drop off. And he's like, okay. And she's like, that's it? You didn't even interview me. And he's just like, I don't need to interview you, Rosie. Like, we grew up together. Like, I know that you can do it. I know you have an MBA. And she's just like, yeah, I can do it. He gives her a signing bonus of $100,000. And she basically has a fit. She's like, what are you talking about, $100,000? That's way too much money. And he's just like, just take the money. Like, you're worth every cent, you're worth every penny. And I was like, oh my God, this man, he's so in love with her. To the point where eventually he has to tell West, her brother, his best friend. And he's like, West, I have to tell you, I'm in love with your sister. And West is just like, yeah, I know. I've met you. Like, I've met you both. Like, it's obvious. Like, no offense. And he's just like, you knew? We're getting snippets of his, like, devotion and kind of love and adoration for her, because he gives her her childhood diary, which he just has because she threw it out a window once, and he went and remembered the spot, and he went and tried to go find it, and he found it, and he gives it back to her 10 years later. It's like all worn and battered. So she's going through it, and she's ripping out journal entries where he's mentioned, spoiler alert, there are a lot of journal entries where he's mentioned, because she's kind of been in love with him too the whole time. She just doesn't realize it. She's just like, wow, I punched a girl today because she said that Ford's like not even attractive, and I can say that about him, but no one else can say that about him. Like, he's mine to bully. I was just like, girl, you're just as in love with him as he is in love with you. Like, there's a lot of that. It was a lot of mutual pining after she realizes that Ford's kind of always been there. He's always been there when she needs him. Like, when she's needed to get picked up from a party, he was there. And there's this really cute, she was just in the journal, she was just like, he must have already been out and about because it's at least a 20-minute drive from our houses, because they're neighbors, from our houses to where I was. But he was here in 10 minutes, and he was just like, the journal entry's wrong. I was at home and I broke every speed limit to get to you. Ah! I'm sorry, when I read that, I was just like, oh my God, this book is ruining me. It was a really cozy, fun read. I'm normally a bit hesitant when it comes to small town romances. Like, I think someone who does it well is It Happened One Summer and Hook, Line and Sinker, the duology from Tessa Bailey. Love. That's set in a small fishing town, Westport. Rose Hill is very country. It's very, very country. As someone who was a part-time country kid, because, you know, separated parents, school holidays and all that, country life, I have a love-hate relationship with the country. So it is one of those tropes where if I see it, I have to like really be captured by the small town in like the first couple of chapters. Otherwise I will give up. Otherwise I will not finish. Like, there has to be a charming quality, and it has to be realistic. Like, it has to be this person at some point, this author at some point has lived in a country town, because there's a sort of essence that you can't capture if you haven't. Like, there's a sort of, people talk differently, people look out for each other more. Country living is very different and separated from city life. And I love that with Rosie, when she returns home, she leaves the big city, she's kind of reconnecting with her roots, and she's just like, I love that I left, and I love that I had that experience, but at the end of the day, I did that because I thought that that's what was expected of me. Everyone kind of thought I was going to be big in the big city, and all I really want is my small country town. All I really want is home. And she goes to her parents at one point and is just like, I'm sorry if I disappointed you, but I want to stay here. And they're like, you guys, all we want for you and West is to be happy. So Ford and Rosie get together after Rosie dumps her kind of boyfriend. When he comes to Rose Hill to check on her, he sees her face and he's like, you're breaking up with me, aren't you? And she's just like, yeah. And he's just like, yeah, I kind of get that. I told my boss that I was coming to see you, and he was just like, wow, you must be like dying to see her, you must be like burning to see her. And he was just like, and I had the realization that I was not burning or pining to get back to you. We're kind of just comfortable together. And she was like, yeah, no, I agree. So they mutually break up, and they're at the diner, and then Ford walks in and he's being a dickhead to the boyfriend because he thinks they must have gotten like, because Rosie says I'm going to break up with him, but he thinks she must not have done it because they're chatting, because God forbid. And then she takes him outside and she's just like, Ford, you can't act like that. He's had a really rough day. And he's like, I don't care what kind of day he's had. And then he kisses her. Oh, super hot. And then she's just like, I broke up with him, by the way. Like, no need to feel guilty because I broke up with him. That's why he's had a shitty day. And Ford was like, I should go apologize for being a dickhead. So yeah, no, it was a really cute read. There was really sweet moments. Elsie Silver's a really great writer. So I am really excited to read the 5-book series. Chestnut, I think there's something about Chestnut. Hold on. Chestnut Springs. is on the map. And I remember reading something about Chestnut Springs, so I think it's like the Chestnut Springs series. So I'm definitely going to have to read that. Wild Eyes. Wild Eyes West. West is not the one with wild eyes. Skylar's the one with wild eyes. I thought for sure it was going to be West, because West in Wild Love is described as like this wild child. West has 2 kids, and one of them is like very full of energy and like runs around very bossy and has very little awareness of like safety and just puts herself out there, which is just wonderful. Love that. But it makes West text his parents, "I'm so sorry that I was such a chaotic kid. Like, I'm so sorry I put you through hell. Like, you must have been so worried about me." So he's described that way. So when I saw that the second book was called Wild Eyes, I was just like, oh, okay, so it's West and his wild eyes, his beautiful baby blues. No, it's Skylar's. Skylar's the one that has wild eyes. We're briefly introduced to Skylar in Wild Love. She's a celebrity. She's a country pop starlet. She's a child star. She makes music, and she's in the news in Wild Love because she was recently photographed coming out of a restaurant and choking up, not being able to speak. And she's been having these sort of episodes where she like literally just freezes up. And we kind of get introduced to that a bit more in Wild Eyes. And it kind of ties back to the fight or flight response, except she's so deep rooted in fear and trauma that it's presenting as a freeze response. So Wild Eyes, West, when he says Wild Eyes, it's in a scene where Skylar is, instead of being demure, instead of being mindful, instead of being the perfectly groomed child star that she was, she has a dig at him. She goes off on him, and he's like, that there, those wild eyes, is the sign of someone who just chose fight over flight. And it's really, really cute. Like this whole thing, West is so self-aware, so emotionally intelligent. I liked West in Wild Love, but I loved him. Like I fell in love with West a little bit. I'm not normally one for the single dad trope. Like it icks me a little bit. Same with the pregnancy trope. It kind of icks me as well. Like if I see a pregnancy trope in a fan fiction, I'm not going to read it. So imagine my surprise when I'm reading this book and I'm like, wow, yeah, I kind of see it. I kind of see it. He's such a good dad, and he co-parents so well with his ex, who's married. And the reason why they didn't work out is because they're not compatible values or lifestyle wise. So his ex, Mia, is like a live, laugh, love girly, very like matching Christmas outfits for Christmas. And he is not. He wants every day to be different. This dude is like an Aquarius personified. Like if you're an astrology girly, you'll know what that means. But like he is like, I want every day to be different. I'm a commitment phobe because I don't want to introduce someone into my kids' lives and into my life that is temporary. Skylar has left her dad, who was her manager growing up, left her agent, kind of blocked everything out, and has gone to Rose Hill to record with Ford's recording studio a new album that's completely her own, because she's just found out that she owns the tiniest percentage of everything that she's ever done, because her dad always took care of the contracts. Her dad, who by the end of the book, she calls her sperm donor because they're completely cut off and estranged, which I kind of love. I also kind of love that Elsie Silver, at the beginning of the book, has a reader's note, and I'll read it to you. This book contains references to childhood psychological abuse and trauma. Substance abuse and death by overdose are mentioned on the page. It is my hope that I've handled these subjects with the care and attention that they deserve. Yes, you have. Thank you, Elsie. She also references having a sensitivity reader at the back of the book in her acknowledgements, And I think that's why I love this book so much, because it just was so accurate. It was so accurate in the portrayal of what it's like to fully blindly trust a parent who then fucks you over who's been fucking you over the whole time, but because you're so blinded and you're like, this person would never hurt me. Her coming to that realization at 26 and being like, I've been lied to my whole life, to the point where I'm now questioning who I am, because I don't know how much of my personality is what I've been told to be. So there was this really beautiful element of self-discovery. So she comes to Rose Hill, she's fed up with the media, fed up with the paparazzi, addicted to her phone, going through all of the articles, reading all the awful shit that's being said about her, and she's staying on West's property, which is next to, you'll remember, their neighbors, which is next to Ford's property. And the reason she's staying there is because she's early. She was scheduled to work with Ford in a couple of months' time. She came a couple of months early. The living quarters for the artists haven't been built yet. So Rosie, being the business manager for Ford, is like, that's fine. My brother lives next door. There's a little separate bunkhouse that's like on the property. You'll have privacy and you can stay there. He won't mind. And she's just like, are you sure? So she goes to meet the brother, and the brother turns out to be the guy that saved her from a bear when she first was driving to Rose Hill. And that's how this book starts. This book starts with West pulling over to the side of the road and being like, who the fuck is this tourist trying to take a photo of this grizzly bear? And he's like trying to talk her down and be like, come on, you need to like stop taking photos of the bear. The bear's not your friend. The bear's not Winnie the Pooh. Like, you need to step back and step away. And she's like, but there's babies. And he's just like, this just got 10 times worse, because Mother Bear's very protective of the babies. So he grabs her and he kind of like pushes her to the ground respectfully. And the bear comes and like has a sniff around and he's like, don't move, be very quiet, lie down, say nothing. And she's like panicking. And then he shows her where everything is when everything's over. So when Rosie says, you can stay next door with my brother, and she opens the door and it's West, Skylar's like, why is this dude like a magnet to me? Like, why are we attracting each other? So she's staying on the property, close proximity trope. West works with horses, which means he's shirtless a lot because it's hard. It's a hard yakka, it's hard work. And he's like washing down the horse and like training the horse and riding the horse. And this whole time Skylar's like just salivating a little bit. She's just like, wow. And then he's such a good dad because his daughter Emmy breaks a glass and Skylar immediately just like freezes and is like waiting for West to just start screaming at her. And he doesn't, obviously, because that is an awful thing to do to a child. And he notices that she freezes up. So he carries Emmy out and then he carries Skylar out and she's just like, don't be mad at her. It wasn't her fault. And he's just like, it's a glass. Like, it's replaceable. I'm not going to yell at my daughter for breaking a glass and making a mistake. Children make mistakes and she's learned a lesson. And Skylar's like, couldn't be me in my childhood home. And then she's like, in that one sentence, he healed a little bit of my soul. And I was just like, oh, this is so cute. But the first week, he throws her phone away. He throws her phone in the lake because he figures out that she's addicted to reading the headlines. And all of the headlines at the moment are super, super negative and super, super gross. And they're criticizing her inability to have a conversation, which is very, very poignant to this book and to West, because West's son, he has 2 kids. So Emmy's the daughter, the rambunctious one. Oliver's the son and he's the oldest, but he also has selective mutism, which was done really well. Like, props. Like, honestly, yeah. He only talks to his dad, his mum, his sister, Rosie and Ford, and now his stepdad. But he talks to Skylar straight away. Skylar's on the property, like the first day, she's walking around the property and kind of getting her bearings, and she sees Ollie reading on a log by the lake, because there's a lake that runs through both properties. And she sits and she's like, do you mind if I sit here? And he's just like, And she's like, what's your name? My name's Skylar. And he's like, Oliver. And when his dad questions him about it later, Oliver's just like, well, I know that she can speak, but I've never met someone who can speak that couldn't speak. And he's referencing all of the nasty headlines, and he's basically found like a kinship with her through that, which is, you know, great because she's going to be living with them for a while. So West and his ex do 1 week on, 1 week off with the kids. So the first week that he doesn't have the kids, he's feeling a bit lonely. He goes to Skylar with a lasagna tray and he's just like, care for some lasagna? And she's like, no. Like, respectfully, I'm still recovering from my life in LA being blown to bits, because she also found out that not only has her leech of a father been sucking out her funds and that she doesn't own basically anything, it's that her dad has also been paying a fellow musician to date her. And that's why when she walked out of the restaurant, she was speechless by the paparazzi, because she just found out her boyfriend basically was like, I didn't get my payment this month, so I'm assuming it's over. And she's like, what payment? What? It was really cute to see her like rediscover herself, get her hands dirty, learn how to make a bed, learn how to take care of the horses. She does night shift with West, and it's just a really feel-good, cozy book. Like, I gave it 5 stars, and it's one that I will be rereading over Christmas to feel like really cozy and just really... She also has a parrot, and the parrot says the most outrageous things that it repeats, because we find out that Skylar's one of those people, because she's been so like prim and proper her whole life, when she feels emotion, it just kind of bursts out of her. And so she has like these rants to her bird Cherry, and then Cherry will cherry pick like different parts of her rant and just like repeat it at the most outrageous times. It was very, very funny. This book, I didn't have any notes. Like in my Instagram review, I was like, I have no notes here. There's like nothing to critique. The writing, beautiful. Character development, beautiful. Characters, yes. The pacing, yes. The ending, the conclusion, everything, the tension. There was not one chapter that didn't need to be in there. There was not one scene that I would have cut. It was flawless, basically. I'm really excited to read the third one. The third one, like I said, is coming out in March, and it is apparently called Wild Side, and it is about Tabby. Now, Tabby is in both of these books. We meet her in Wild Love. She makes the tea blends, and then in Wild Eyes, we find out that her sister's died, and she doesn't want to tell anyone because her sister was kind of known as the town druggie, so she's kind of like kept it under wraps because she knows that like people in the country gossip. Like, that's just what you do. That's a fun pastime of anyone in the country. And it sucks. And she's been left with the custody of her sister's son. So she's basically taking care and raising her nephew now. So she's the love interest in book 3 with the tall, broody guy who we don't know much about. So his name's Reese. And I feel like at the moment, a lot of books that are being released at the moment have a character called Reese, but I'm not complaining. It's a pretty name. So Reese and Tabby will be the pairing for the third book, and I'm so excited because I want to know her story more, and I assume that there'll be another reader's note, given that Tabby clearly had some sort of upbringing for her sister to be the way that she is as well. But knowing that she had a sensitivity reader for Wild Eyes, I'm sure it's going to all be done in good taste and done accurately. That was it for this book review. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.